there's a quiet desperation that runs through most people's lives, a constant attempt to control how others see them, speak to them, or treat them. We walk around tethered to invisible threads, hoping no one tugs too hard on our insecurities. One harsh word, one disapproving look, one rejection, and our internal world begins to crumble. We like to believe we're in control of our emotions. But for most, the truth is the opposite. They're completely controlled by external forces, by people, by circumstances, by fears and unresolved wounds they haven't even named. But what if you could sever those invisible threads? What if you could reach a point where nobody's approval validates you, and nobody's disapproval destroys you? Carl Jung, the legendary Swiss psychiatrist, believed this state of inner sovereignty is not only possible, it's essential. He called it individuation, the journey toward becoming your true self, no longer enslaved by the unconscious mind, the ego, or society's projections. In this video, we'll explore why most people remain stuck in emotional reactivity, and how Jung's deep psychological insights offer a powerful path toward real emotional freedom, a path where the chaos of the world no longer shakes you, because the war inside you has already been resolved. To understand emotional freedom, we first have to face a difficult truth. Most people are not emotionally free. They are reactive, easily disturbed, constantly influenced by things outside of themselves. We live in a time where people are addicted to feedback. Every post needs a like. Every idea needs applause. Every action is done with one eye on the mirror of public opinion. Whether we admit it or not, many of us are governed by the fear of being judged, excluded, or misunderstood. Carl Jung saw this not as a modern issue, but a timeless human trap. He believed that most people are not individuals. They are collections of borrowed beliefs, suppressed emotions, and unconscious fears. One of the deepest reasons people are so easily affected by others is because they haven't owned their inner world. When someone criticizes you and you break down, it's not the words that hurt. It's the unhealed wound inside you that was already waiting to be poked. Jung called this projection. We don't see people as they are. We see them through the filter of our shadow, our repressed self. And when that reflection shows us something we haven't made peace with, it feels like an attack. We think the world is hurting us. But in reality, it's mirroring us. This is why most people can't escape the emotional roller coaster of life. They've given the world permission to define their worth, and until they take that power back, they'll always be a puppet to other people's opinions. True freedom begins when you stop outsourcing your identity. Carl Jung once wrote, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is." The shadow is one of Jung's most powerful and misunderstood concepts. It refers to the parts of ourselves that we reject, suppress, or deny. These could be impulses we're ashamed of, traits we were taught to hate, or emotions we were never allowed to express, like anger, jealousy, arrogance, or fear. When we were young, we learned, directly or indirectly, that certain behaviors and feelings were unacceptable, so we buried them. We pushed them into the unconscious mind. But what gets buried doesn't disappear. It grows in the dark. It becomes the shadow. The more we repress it, the more control it has over us. Because the shadow is unconscious, it doesn't ask for permission. It acts. It lashes out. It sabotages. It distorts our view of others, and it does all of this without us even realizing it. Jung believed that much of human suffering comes not from the outside world, but from our refusal to look inward. When someone offends you, it might not be because they're wrong. It might be because they touched a part of you that you've never made peace with. This is why you can't control how others treat you until you've made peace with what you're trying to hide from yourself. The shadow is not your enemy. It's your neglected self, begging to be acknowledged. And until you face it, other people will continue to control you, not through force but through reflection. You will think you're reacting to them, but you're actually reacting to the part of yourself that you've never dared to face. Freedom begins with radical self-honesty, and the shadow is the first doorway. Carl Jung didn't believe the goal of life was perfection. He believed it was wholeness. This journey toward wholeness is what he called individuation, a deep psychological and spiritual process of becoming who you truly are, beyond masks, roles, and societal conditioning. Most people live from the ego, the constructed identity that tries to look good, stay safe, and fit in. The ego isn't evil, it's just incomplete. It represents only a small fraction of who you are. But the problem is, when you live only from the ego, you're fragile, easily bruised, constantly in defense mode. Individuation begins when you start to look beyond the ego. When you say, "What have I been hiding from myself?" When you take ownership of your shadow instead of blaming others for triggering it. In Jung's model, true power doesn't come from controlling your surroundings. It comes from integrating your psyche. When the conscious and unconscious mind start working together instead of against each other, you become grounded. You become emotionally sovereign. What others say about you no longer destabilizes you, because it doesn't touch the parts of you that used to be ashamed or hidden. You've already faced those parts. You've accepted them. You've reclaimed them. That's why individuation is not a surface-level process. It's an inner revolution. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about becoming someone whole. And when you're whole, you stop needing other people to complete you, validate you, or fix you. Jung believed that the individuated person was free, not because the world changed, but because they stopped being at war with themselves. And when that inner conflict is resolved, nothing outside of you has power over you anymore. There's a common misunderstanding about emotional strength. People often confuse detachment with suppression. We think being unaffected means becoming numb. We think strength is about not feeling, not caring, not reacting. But this is a trap, and Carl Jung warned against it. Jung didn't advocate for coldness or emotional shutdown. In fact, he believed that true emotional power comes not from avoidance, but from awareness. Not from escaping emotion, but from consciously engaging with it, without being consumed by it. When you suppress an emotion, anger, sadness, fear, you don't get rid of it. You just push it underground, into the unconscious. And the shadow grows stronger. You might appear calm on the outside, but inside you're boiling. And eventually, that energy has to go somewhere. It leaks out through passive aggression, anxiety, depression, or sudden explosions. Jung's solution was conscious detachment. It's the ability to observe your emotion without becoming it. Instead of saying, "I am angry," you say, "I notice anger arising within me." That small shift in language separates the self from the feeling. You create space, and in that space, you find freedom. It's not about denying emotion. It's about choosing your response consciously, not reacting automatically. Jung believed that consciousness expands your freedom. The more self-aware you become, the less life can throw you off balance. Because you're no longer at the mercy of buried reactions, you've brought them into the light. In this light, no emotion is the enemy. Every feeling becomes a signal, a teacher, a chance to grow. And that's real strength, not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. Carl Jung's ideas weren't just abstract theories, they were meant to be lived. He believed psychological insight without practical integration was meaningless. If you want to become someone who cannot be shaken by others, you need to do the inner work. Not once, but consistently. Below are 4 Jungian-inspired practices that build what we can call emotional immunity, a stable sense of self that remains grounded, even in chaos. Shadow journaling. Every emotional trigger is a breadcrumb leading you back to a part of yourself. Shadow journaling is the daily practice of following those trails. Each evening, reflect. What upset me today? Who made me feel inferior, jealous, angry, or rejected? What part of me did that experience expose? You're not writing to blame others. You're writing to reclaim your projections. The more honestly you journal, the more conscious you become of what lives in your shadow. Active imagination. This is a method Jung used to access the unconscious directly. Sit quietly. Visualize an emotion, a part of yourself, or even a recurring dream figure. Now imagine having a dialogue with it. Ask it, "Why are you here? What do you want me to understand?" Let it speak. Write down the conversation. You may be surprised by what your psyche reveals. Over time, this builds a deep internal relationship with your own mind and transforms your inner chaos into clarity. Projection. Reversal. When you strongly dislike or idolize someone, ask, what part of myself am I seeing in them? Instead of blaming or worshiping, use these moments as mirrors. If someone's arrogance bothers you, is there a part of you that's afraid to own your confidence? If you envy someone's success, is your own ambition being denied? Reversing. Projections collapses emotional power struggles. Emotional naming and observation. Train yourself to observe rather than react. When a feeling rises, say, I notice anxiety. I observe anger. This subtle shift activates your higher awareness, separating you from the emotion. You become the witness, not the reactor. This is the foundation of real composure. None of these practices are quick fixes. They require intention. But over time, they build the kind of inner stability that Jung believed was the mark of a truly individuated, sovereign self, a person who can walk through storms and remain still inside. Imagine waking up one day and realizing you're no longer at the mercy of other people's moods, opinions, or judgments. You don't get thrown off by someone's cold tone. You don't feel crushed when someone criticizes you. You don't feel the need to defend, prove, or explain yourself just to feel worthy. Why? Because you've reclaimed the power you unknowingly gave away. Carl Jung believed that the more we integrate the unconscious, especially the shadow, the less we become slaves to the external world. The more we own our inner chaos, the less the outer chaos can dominate us. When you reach this level of self-possession, here's what starts to shift. You no longer take things personally. Someone's reaction says more about them than it does about you. You no longer seek constant reassurance. You've built trust with yourself. You no longer overreact to small things. Your emotional world becomes spacious, not reactive. You stop playing roles. You begin to live with authentic presence, and most importantly, you stop being easily manipulated by guilt, by shame, by fear, by flattery. You become grounded, rooted, still. It's not that emotions disappear. It's that they no longer control your decisions, your identity, or your peace. You become a center of gravity, someone who influences their environment without being tossed around by it. This is what Jung meant by becoming whole. You are no longer divided inside, and so the outside world can no longer divide you either. That's what it means to be truly unaffected. At the heart of Carl Jung's work was a radical idea. You are not your ego. The ego is the surface self, the one that was shaped by praise and punishment, reward and rejection. It's the mask you wear, the story you tell yourself, the identity you constructed to survive. But beneath the ego is something far deeper, more stable, more powerful, the self. The self is whole. It includes light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, clarity and confusion. It doesn't need to pretend, defend, or control. It simply is. And once you begin to identify with this deeper self, something shifts. You stop needing to be right all the time. You stop trying to win arguments. You stop over-identifying with your roles, worker, friend, partner, status symbol. Instead, you begin to live from a place of inner stillness. You observe the world, but you are not shaken by it. You feel deeply, but you are not ruled by those feelings. You act with compassion, not because you need approval, but because it's your nature. This is not passivity. It's power. Carl Jung believed that when a person touches their true self, they become indestructible in spirit, not because they are hardened, but because they are integrated. When you stop living from the ego, you stop being a puppet pulled by every external string. You become the one who holds the strings, and in that moment, nobody and nothing will affect you again, because you've remembered who you truly are. Most people spend their lives building walls to keep the world out, never realizing the real prison is within. Carl Jung showed us that the key to true freedom isn't found in changing the world, controlling others, or avoiding discomfort. It's found in changing your relationship with yourself. emotional reactivity, insecurity, fear of judgment. All of these are signs that we've not yet met ourselves fully. We're still living in fragments, still outsourcing our power to people who don't even know who we are. But once you begin the journey of individuation, once you face the shadow, listen to your unconscious and peel away the layers of the ego, something incredible happens. You stop asking, "What will they think of me?" and start asking, "What do I know to be true within me?" You stop needing to prove your worth, because you've already claimed it. You stop fearing rejection, because you've stopped rejecting yourself. This doesn't make you untouchable. It makes you whole. And when you are whole, nobody and nothing can shake you from your center. Carl Jung didn't offer an easy path, but he offered a real one. And if you're brave enough to walk it, the reward is profound. A life where your peace is not a reaction, but a foundation. A mind that is no longer in conflict with itself. A self that is rooted, real, and finally, free. The world may never stop trying to affect you, but once you've met your deepest self, it never will again.